Each year, the GNUUC board has a retreat in August to plan for the future. One of the purposes of the retreat is to consider the GNUUC mission statement and to discuss what we will focus on this year to achieve our mission. The result is our vision statement, nurture those who seek our community. And in the spirit of our vision, here is a reading titled Unconditional Love by Mark Nepo. Unconditional love is not so much about how we receive or endure each other, as it is about the deep vow to never, under any condition, stop bringing the flawed truth of who we are to each other. When Unitarian Universalists gather for worship, we light a chalice, a beacon to all who are in danger, a signal that they can find sanctuary here. Eddie will light our chalice this morning. Thank you, Eddie. Yeah, just a little. Oh, okay. Oh, there it is. A little better. Yeah. Thanks, Jesse. Oh, there it goes. It wants to fall. Okay, I think we're good. Let's take a moment. I see we have a few more guests walking in. Hello. Good morning. How are you? Good. Good to see you. Our chalice lighting today is by Florence Kaplow. We kindle this flame, honoring the doorways in our souls, the windows through which we gaze at one another, the balconies where we catch glimpses of sky, the thresholds we stand on this morning, wandering, hoping, fearing, dreaming. We Unitarian Universalists are people of the covenant. We make commitments to each other and with the world around us about what we stand for and what we will do to make the world a better place. This is our congregational covenant, and I invite you to recite it with me if this is a commitment that you are ready to make. We covenant together to make a welcoming community, to walk together in the way of truth and love, to seek the life of the Spirit as it is known by each person, to support each other in thought, word, and deed as we work to build a better world. Our opening hymn today is Pool of Love by Alexa Sunshine Rose. Please rise in body or in spirit as you are so moved. This piece will play through 2 times and the lyrics are on the screen.
May the pool of love we have gathered here spread its wings and fly far and near, from the depths of our hearts to the farthest star. May our love bless everyone. May our love bless everyone. May the pool of love we have gathered here spread its wings and fly far and near, from the depths of our hearts to the farthest star. May our love bless everyone.
So this is my story of how I came upon GNUUC. My kids are here today, Stella and Leonardo, and they are probably going to recall this story. They're part of it. How I met my church home. It was a mild spring day in 2019 when my family and I were wrapping up the final performance of Lion King Jr. in Humphreys County. Where should we grab a bite to celebrate? Well, there was a New York style pizzeria, believe it or not, nearby, and they served a fantastic spinach pie. We sat down and the server came by to take our order. They immediately came by and they had conversation with us, and quickly we realized how much we had in common. By the end of our meal, we had exchanged phone numbers and had plans to meet again with their partner. Fast forward a month or so, my family and I were adopting chickens, ducks, and a cat from our new friends who were moving to another town. As we said our goodbyes one summer afternoon, they mentioned a place they discovered in Bellevue called Ganook. Ganook. Okay, I asked Ganook, and after explaining the acronym GNUUC, and that it was just easier to say Ganook, they both shared the joy they had found here and invited us to their summer song sermons. Of course, I was curious and knew we had to see for ourselves. The butterflies were stirring as we pulled into the parking lot. The doors opened, and there stood Jenny on the right and David on the left. Two smiling faces that have burned an image into my memory that has never faded. Here I stand 3 years later. Who would have thought this, right? Who knew that going to a pizzeria and meeting kindred spirits would lead me to walk through those doors? I have said this on many occasions that this was already written. It was always going to happen just like that. Thank you. And now we are going to invite Teresa up for our time for All Sages. Thank you, Teresa.
All right. Let me just find some room here. Okay, well, we've got a wonderful book, a story today for you called Who is My Neighbor by Amy Jo Levine. That's a name I've heard before. Sandy Eisenberg Sasso is her co-writer, illustrated by Denise Turu. And one more side comment. Starring in this book are the colors blue and yellow. And I just want to remind people that blue and yellow, or blue and gold, actually, go blue, two of my favorite colors. So we shall begin then. Once there was a town where only blues lived. There were navy and indigo, aqua and sapphire, powder blue, midnight blue. They planted irises and forget-me-nots and feasted on blueberries and blue cheese. They sailed on blue waters, blue jays perched on branches, and brilliant blue cracker butterflies shimmered. The blues thought they were the coolest colors. The yellows lived in a different town. There were gold and bronze, lemon and mustard, canary and pale yellow. They planted sunflowers and daffodils and feasted on bananas and butterscotch pudding. They traveled on yellow brick roads. Goldfinches perched on branches and busy yellow jackets buzzed. The yellows thought they were the hottest colors. The blues and the yellows did not like one another very much. Be careful of the yellows. We are better than they are. They are not our neighbors. And they warned children not to go near the others. Be careful of the blues. We are better than they are, and they are not our neighbors. For years, the blues said there was no such thing as a good yellow. And the yellows said there was no such thing as a good blue. One day, Midnight Blue was put on his best blue helmet and got on his blue bike. He loved cruising under the bright blue sky, and passing by tranquil blue lakes, singing a bluegrass tune, of course. Then out of the blue, someone passed so close to Midnight Blue that he lost his balance. Bump, bump, and Midnight Blue tumbled to the ground. Boy, I can relate to that one. His knees started to turn black and blue. Midnight Blue needed help. Along came Navy. Navy will help me. Midnight Blue thought, but Navy was afraid. She wondered, maybe somebody made Midnight Blue fall, and maybe they're still around and they might make me fall. So Navy pretended not to notice that Midnight Blue had fallen. Midnight Blue was so surprised. Why hadn't Navy stopped to help? After all, Navy was his neighbor. Along came Powder Blue. Powder Blue will help me. Midnight Blue thought, but Powder Blue wondered, did Midnight Blue get in a fight? Is the other person still around? He was afraid, so he pretended not to notice Midnight Blue. Midnight Blue was surprised. Why hadn't Powder Blue stopped? After all, Powder Blue was his neighbor. Neither Navy or Powder Blue is true blue. Along came Lemon. Oh no, a yellow, thought Midnight Blue. A yellow will only make things worse. Maybe this yellow will steal my books. But Midnight Blue wasn't the only one who was scared. Lemon worried about helping a blue. What if that blue wanted to trick her? What if that blue jumped up and took her bike? Maybe she should just hurry on by. But Lemon didn't hurry by. She decided to help. She didn't steal his books. She picked them up. She lifted Midnight Blue from the dirt, handed him his helmet, and helped him to get on the back of her bike. Then she took him to her doctor. While they waited, Lemon gave Midnight a butterscotch cookie. It was broken, but still delicious. Midnight Blue said, "You're a good yellow, not like all the others." "Most yellows are good," Lemon said. "So are most blues," Midnight Blue said, and he smiled. He pulled out a small bag of blueberries and gave some to Lemon. They were a little squished, but still yummy. When Dr. Gold came out, Midnight Blue was still a bit frightened. Dr. Gold was another yellow. But Dr. Gold smiled at him. She shined a light into his eyes and checked to make sure nothing was broken and put a bandage on each knee and said he was good as gold. Midnight Blue turned to Lemon and said, "Thank you for helping me. I would like to be your friend." Lemon nodded. "Of course, a good friend." When Midnight Blue returned to his town, he told all the blues what had happened. It was not at all what they expected to hear. He said Lemon did not pass by. Lemon did not look the other way. Lemon helped, and Dr. Gold did too. The Blues thought, the yellows don't look like us or eat the same foods, but maybe the yellows can be our friends. When Lemon returned to her town, she told all the yellows what had happened. It was not at all what they expected to hear, she said. Midnight Blue wasn't mean at all. He was thankful. He shared his blueberries with me. So sweet. And from now on, we're going to be friends. The yellows thought, the Blues don't know our songs or grow our plants, but maybe we can help the Blues and the Blues can help us. From that time on, the Blues and the yellows began to say, maybe we don't have to look alike or even live nearby. Perhaps we will like hearing new songs and tasting new foods. We might like making new friends, and maybe we can all help one another. Maybe, said Midnight Blue. Lemon smiled. Maybe, just maybe.
Thank you, Teresa. It is now time for the kids to go to RE. So you can go ahead and go with Miss Kristen and Miss Claire and Nathaniel. Into the window today. Thank you, Frank. September's Share the Plate partner is the Nashville Cares AIDS Walk. Founded in 1985, Nashville Cares is the premier HIV/AIDS service organization in Tennessee. They serve more than 50,000 people statewide each year and provide comprehensive services to clients throughout 17 counties in Middle Tennessee. They provide targeted education, free and confidential HIV testing, and a broad range of comprehensive services to individuals who are at risk for or living with HIV. This month, we have a goal to raise $1,000 for the AIDS Walk. Donations of $100 or more will go directly to Nashville Cares. Donations less than $100 will be split with the GNUUC plate. If you would like to join the team for the walk on October 1st, just contact Kristen. Please take a moment to read about the ways you can donate. And Fran will now play the offertory Shepherd's Dance by Heinrich Hoffmann. Thank you.
Hello, Unitarian Universalists. I'm the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, president of your Unitarian Universalist Association. It is so good to be with you for another season of Ingathering. This time marks the end of summer when we come together to renew our commitments to each other, to our Unitarian Universalist communities, and to begin another vital year of ministry. In the summer months, I hope that you and your loved ones found some time to rejuvenate your bodies and spirits, to rest, to enjoy the long summer days, to pursue hobbies that bring you joy. I know that the world is all too much, and it matters that we take time to rest. For rest is necessary for the quality of our lives, of our ministries, and of our spirits. We are all living in what I have come to call a liminal time, a time in between. The pandemic has upended so much. After 2 years plus of virtual and hybrid gatherings in our congregations, the ways in which people connect to religious community has broadened, and new patterns are still emerging. On so many levels, what comes next is still unfolding and being imagined. As Unitarian Universalists, we are called to care for each other and to create resilient, theologically imaginative spiritual community that sustains us and inspires us as we navigate what's to come and what is needed. And there is so much needed. From supporting access to reproductive care to showing up through UU the Vote to elect leaders that will work to protect our children, our planet, our future, and our deeply held values. It also matters that we attend to doing the fundamentals of religious community, like supporting children and families recovering from, and in some cases still experiencing, the collective trauma of the last few years. Our world needs our message of love and justice. Our world needs brave, bold, and loving communities that are in the struggle for equity, dignity, and compassion. One way to join with your sibling Unitarian Universalists in this work is through UU the Vote. You can find out more at uuthevote.org. Your Unitarian Universalist Association is the embodiment of the covenant that all of our congregations make to each other to support each other. And the UUA is here because of your commitment to make and support and amplify our values, to support each of our congregations in their time of need, and to be more than any of us are alone. At the UUA, we are committed to being steadfast partners with you in this liminal time and in all that is ahead. As you gather in this sacred hour and join again in community, may we each remember the hundreds and thousands of Unitarian Universalists that are gathering all across our association, celebrating and calling themselves back into the power and the possibility of faithful community. For we are not alone, and we make each other strong. I send you my love and my blessings as we enter this new congregation year and celebrate Ingathering. Much love and deep care to all of you.
UC Board of Directors. You have met Tina, our current president of the board. You have met Teresa Tarkington Kersey, one of our members at large, and you have met Eddie Bailey, who is also a member at large. Thank you. You will, most of you will already know Sandy. And if you don't, you will know her soon. And you will also meet Ryan Davison one day, especially if you attend the game night that we're planning later this fall. Let me tell you a story about my family. 1996 and our move to Bloomington, Indiana. We were taking one of those very choppy, discordant moves. Jesse started graduate school in July and PhD program for cognitive psychology at Indiana University in Bloomington. Adrian was not born in July. He was born in September. And in early October, my sister Lisa and I got into a car and drove from Florida to Indiana. And we got to Bloomington and where we were going to spend the next 5 years. Although at that time, there were a lot of questions. Neither of us had attended church for years. I had mentioned the Catholic Church down the street. Seemed like they had a pretty nice congregation. They were exploring their boundaries in that time of the Catholic Church, before the 21st century. And we might want to look into it. Jesse immediately connected with the UU Church a mile away from us. So Lisa and I show up with Adrian, all of 2 weeks old, and we walk through the doors of that congregation. I was still recovering from delivery. We were warmly greeted on that first Sunday morning, and I don't remember much else except for some feeling of hope in my heart and a lot of questions in my head of what we might find there. We wanted to raise our children, well, our child at the time. We wanted to raise our child with a set of ethics, morals, and values. We wanted to raise them without the fear of asking questions. And we wanted them to make their own reasonable choices beyond what we provided for them as a foundation for life. We did not know what else we were seeking. But what we found, to my utter amazement, was a community of loving, imperfect, striving, faltering, challenging, supporting, changing, and growing group of people with whom we shared the best and worst of our 5 years in America's heartland, somewhere down the road from John Cougar Mellencamp, who might as well have been living in China for all we knew. And we joined that congregation and we grew with them. By the time we walked through those doors for the first time in 2010, shortly before the Great Flood of Nashville, we had an idea of what we were looking for and what we could offer. We immediately connected with Kristen and her child Xander, and we met Larry and we met Mike, and I'm sure we met others. But again, with the very recent distractions of having just moved across states and sold and bought houses and placed children in new schools. And yes, Laurel, you are going to spend these next 3 months in second grade again, but I promise it will be better for you in the long run. And traffic like we had never experienced in a city where we knew no one. I walked through these back doors for the first time with hope in my heart and better formed questions in my head. We were seeking a community of loving, imperfect, striving, faltering, challenging, supporting, changing, and growing group of people with whom we could share the next stage of our family's life. Except for a very few and beloved special founders of this congregation, of which there's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 in the room today, who formed this church during a time of conflict and strife and deceit and chauvinism and and hope and an honest attempt to make good of what was a bad situation about 30 years ago. All of us have walked through these doors for the first time, maybe with hope in our hearts and questions in our heads. The president of the UUA, Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, spoke to us living in a liminal time, a time in between. In March of 2020, we stopped meeting in person, and we collectively faced a dumpster fire of a year with anxiety in our hearts and unanswerable questions in our heads. But as the good Reverend said, on so many levels, what comes next is still being imagined. We have broadened the ways in which people connect to us, and we continue to do so. Another source that I found online talks about community as the interrelatedness of people. It's about belonging to something larger than ourselves. It helps people to say, I am a valued part of this body and I have contributions to make. The essence of community is a feeling of being in relationship with others. And as this reference states, as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals centered in Jesus. So close, so close. And yet we're not quite that community because we believe in people. We are centered in a wider range of truths. We are totally down and happy with you if you are centered in Jesus. But we have people who are centered in the Buddha. We have people who are centered in no deity whatsoever. We have people who are questioning their truths and continue to do so throughout their life. We have a wide range of truths to call from, and we do so. When we have our differences, which we do, we have rules, by which we follow, and we try to manage those differences as well we can. And most of the time we do. One of the things that we do depend on is we're not necessarily centered in Jesus to tell us everything that we need to know, is that we're dependent on each other to communicate with each other well, to come to the table with honest intent and feeling to solve our problems. Our failures to do so have been our most significant learning experiences. And some of us still mourn the loss of those we can no longer call our own or keep as close as we'd like to today. As we work on today's vision of our nurturing community, we recognize the need in ourselves and each other to connect on different levels. We have friendly work together and share lunch on Sunday connections. We have see you next week for dinner connections. But we also have cry on my shoulder as long as you need to type of connections. And we have the please help my spouse after I'm gone connections too. A year ago this week, Reverend Denise was starting her second hectic week as our minister. We were not meeting in person. We were holding our own. We did not know at that time that we would suffer the trauma of vandalism in our religious education building, followed by a flood in this building, followed by a plague of cicada killers out front. Okay, maybe it's not a plague of cicada killers, but they're big and they're kind of scary and they're all over the front of the church during June and July. And it was a topic of conversation for a few people. Last year, our vision of ministry was pretty straightforward. It was nurture connections. We knew that we would be meeting in person by the end of the year. And we wanted to welcome Reverend Denise to our community. And we wanted to figure out how to move forward with, at that time, things were still not quite all together. There were vaccines, but there were still little, rises. No, or may have been before the vaccines even. Time flies when you're having a lousy moment of it. So this year, so that was it. It's like we had to meet our mission as a community, as a congregation, which is different from a social club, which is different from a civic club in this town, of which there are many, many good organizations, to meet our mission, we nurture. And this year, we wanted to set that bar again, not too high. You know, we're a community that can reach occasionally. We like to go for the high bar, small but mighty. We didn't want to, leave it low. We didn't want to just, pick up, and see where we left off. So we set it like right about chest level. And we decided that we were going to continue to nurture, because that's what we do. And we were going to nurture those who seek our community as a mechanism by which we would meet and achieve our mission. Those of us today here with us, and those who aren't, those of us we haven't seen for a while but still care about each other, and those of us we haven't met yet because they haven't walked our doors. Even though they've driven by us a dozen times and they've set their alarm clock and they just haven't made it over here at 11 o'clock. But we know they will one day when it's time. We're honestly grateful to see each other in person or by Zoom, and we just keep doing this. And that's good enough. The first day Tina's friends from Waverly walked through our doors was a tough day. We were working through some stuff in the congregation. We had differences of opinion, and there were people on both sides who strongly felt a sense of right, and there were one or two people in the middle who were taking advantage of a situation. I honestly did not expect to see Annie and Logan to ever walk through our doors again. But we did see them, and they were deeply part of our congregation for a while, until life took them from here into another city. And I know they still think about us the way that we still think about them. Dr. Amy Jill Levine of Vanderbilt, and our story today, and a co-author of our story today, is a member of our extended community here in Nashville. The last time she was here, she gave us several copies of her book. And she told us that we were the only church in Nashville that she had attended in recent times. And she speaks at a lot of places in Nashville, who kept our doors open during service. And I looked up and I realized that our doors were not only unlocked, but they were wide open, letting the breeze in, letting the flies in, because we were trying to create as safe an environment as we could for our congregation, because having anyone suffer from COVID here, especially badly, was too horrible of a thought for us to even consider. Last Monday and again yesterday, a group of us showed up to empty the storage pod out there and try and get ourselves ready for the last round of flood recovery and prepare for today, which is our first potluck that we've had since anyone can remember. This is who we are. This is what we do. We do not have communion, but we occasionally have fresh-baked sourdough bread. And David told me a long time ago that people have joined the church for Mike's banana pudding with fresh whipped cream topping. Except for Carol and Dan Looney, who have been in and out all this week, and not just last Monday and again yesterday, who have been cleaning out the kitchen cabinets and washing dishes before putting them away. The only person who can blame for all of the stuff still hanging around the sides of that room is me. And my friends are very forgiving of me when I ask for something to put into Karen's hoarder corner until we can decide if it needs to be kept, given away, or really just tossed in the garbage. Yesterday, there was another couple who found their way to the front of our parking lot, Jen and Scott. Teresa came in and said, "Did you know there's an officer sitting outside in our parking lot?" We're like, really. And he comes in and he says, oh, it's like I escorted them over here. Their car has a bad tire. They had driven from the neighborhood next door on the rim, over here because they had been there since the night before and they said they couldn't stay. And they said they could drive down to the church. And I think they were meaning the church down the street that no longer meets there regularly. But honestly, they weren't going to make it that far on their rim. So they stopped here and we said, sure, you can stay. Do you want a cup of coffee? Because even though the officer told me he had run a background check on them and said they were cool, I honestly didn't care. Because a lot of people come and walk through our campus. Keep an eye on them. It's like in addition to the bunny rabbit that showed up on the camera on the front door, sometime last week, we have this entire family of people that walk over in the afternoons with their 2 daughters. The older, taller one was teaching the younger, smaller one how to shoot basketball. And it is so, so precious and makes up for anything that we have to put up with for keeping our campus open and a safe space in our community, in my mind, even though we need to be sure that we're wrapping, that we've got the guardrails kind of under control. At one point in the afternoon, while I was sitting back here and writing this talk, which it must kind of sound like it, but at one point when I was back there writing this talk, Jen came in and Jesse and Scott were at Discount Tire on the other side of town. And she walked in and said, oh, and we talked about church. Were you raised in church? Oh, yeah, she was raised in a church, in a real, kind of strict church. Although she said that she always felt welcome and that that she remembered, she had fond memories of her grandmother and the church in which, she attended with her and her grandfather. And she saw our baby grand up here. And she said, oh, it's a grand.
It's the biggest.
Okay. And she said, she saw that piano. You see, this is how much I know about pianos. And she said, oh, and she looked at it and she said, do you mind? And I'm thinking, oh, what would Fran say? And I'm thinking, as long as she's not pounding on the keys like the kids do, I'm thinking like chopsticks. I'm like, go for it. She opens it up and she sits down and she starts playing Dance by Garth Brooks, which I was not familiar with at the time. And I stopped what I was doing. I looked up and I've got tears in my eyes because it is so beautiful. And she told me later that she played it at her grandfather's funeral because it was his favorite song and she would never forget how to play it. And it was a moment. And I was so grateful for just being in this room and just alive and this talk was already writing itself. And I told her I would add it. And I did. And so they wrote us, Scott and Jen wrote Jesse and I a thank you note, which was lovely. And they gave us their number and said, we do odd jobs and stuff, if you need us, if you need our help. And we invited them back here on Sunday. And I tell them that we always do lunch because that's our thing. And if they're really lucky, they'll come on a day when Mike does his banana pudding with homemade whipped cream topping. And we stood there right there in our foyer for just a few moments, the 4 of us, and we were just grateful for these times that restore our mutual faith in good and in the good of other people, and where it is found in the strangest and most unexpected places in the world. This year, our vision of ministry is, like I said, a call to action. We will nurture those who seek our community. Those of us here today, those of us we haven't seen for a while, but still in our hearts, and those we haven't had a chance to meet yet. But we will keep our doors unlocked until they decide to show up, until it's their time. We will have fun while we work on this nurturing community, because our liminal year should be grounded in laughter. We will help our small but mighty community grow with intention, not just for growth's sake, but focused on personal transformations for us as individuals and for our role in the transformation of the larger world. We will, in our liminal year, continue to reconnect, because I know if I have letters to write to people and notes to send, that people who are better at writing notes and sending them than I probably do too. And we will do this in commitment to our mission, which gives us a purpose to keep showing up on Sundays, even when someone really, really thinks it's better to stay at home. But you would be very, very sad if Mike showed up with banana pudding and you aren't here to kind of jostle somebody for a single treasured scoop of its luscious banana goodness. Our mission, which we are called to serve, is the transforming power of love is our core belief. Not we will be financially stable by the end of 20 years, or we will send somebody to the moon. Just the transforming power of love in whatever form it takes is our core belief. We as a community, when we wrote this mission, stated that we embody a sanctuary of compassion, integrity, and respect. That we will, in whatever way that we can serve, champion justice, equity, and peace. We have given members of our congregation the confidence and the opportunity to be arrested for a good cause, and they are grateful, and that is good enough. When we, at the beginning of our service, we read our covenant, and that covenant reminds us each day, because we lose track of the mission. It's somewhere, when we had paper copies of our order of service, it was written there, but for the most part, it's sitting out there on the website somewhere. And we kind of, need to keep track of it because it's important. And our covenant helps us to keep track of it because we covenant together to make a welcoming community, to walk together in truth and love, to seek the life of the Spirit as it is known by each person, to support each other in thought, word, and deed, even when we're not maybe necessarily happy with that person because they're not doing what we want them to do right now, but we still love them. And we will work together to build a better world. Again, from Susan Frederick Gray, our world needs our message of love and justice. Our world needs brave, bold, and loving communities in the struggle for justice, equity, and compassion. Our vision of ministry is meant to help us live the GNUUC mission. And I felt that when Dr. Amy Jill Levine gave us this book, and I was copying these slides into our service for today, that what was the opening of her book spoke to us as well. When she wrote, because she's a scholar, she's a religious scholar, love your neighbor as you love yourself, and love the stranger because you know what it was like to be a stranger. And we will do that, and we'll have fun, and we'll do good. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Now is time for Joys and